Welcome back to Traveling Dice. This is Jason. Today I have a top 10 list for you, the top 10 units in all of Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition. And I want to just point out, going into this list, that I'm focusing on units. So units that you can take multiple models in, more than one. So I'm excluding monsters from the list. I'm also excluding things like the Iron Blaster in the Ogre Kingdom's army or the Skull Cannon in the Demons of Chaos army. So focusing on these units, these are the top 10. Now, I'm also not just going like the top 10 units that are going to ruin your opponent's day or wreck your opponent's face. There are some units in the list that are going to do that, but I'm also focusing on, the value that you're getting, the points cost for the unit, what they're capable of doing. Are they a great redirector? And so there will be a few choices on the list that aren't just units that are going to cause an immense amount of damage to your opponent. All right, going to start out with an honorable mention here. Honorable mention is the RAZORGOR herd from the Beastmen army. I think this unit is oftentimes overlooked, and it's a great choice. They can be taken a unit size of 1+, okay, which gives you the option of fielding these guys as a single model. That really helps in a lot of situations. They're cheap. They're only 55 points each. Their movement 7, very maneuverable. Strength 5, toughness 5. Only 3 wounds. I wouldn't mind seeing them at 4 wounds, but they have 4 attacks. Now, these guys should be charging their movement 7. So on the turn in which they charge, they have Thunderous Charge, giving them +1 strength. So on the turn that they charge, they're strength 6. They don't have anything for defense. Their defense is toughness 5, but toughness 5 can absorb a lot. You're going to be facing a lot of shooting that's strength 3, generally speaking, in Warhammer. And strength 3, they're going to need 6s to wound these guys. So even if you're fielding them as an individual model, they can suck up a lot of attention from your opponent. And then as individual models, they can go and they can harass smaller, weaker units, potentially threaten war machines and things of that nature. But even if you're not going with fielding them as a single model and you're going to actually, field these as a unit of 3 to 6 models, I still think they're a great choice. They can do a lot of damage on a charge. And yeah, frequently overlooked. I really love these guys. Getting over to the official list, coming in at the number 10 slot, we have Chaos Knights from the Warriors of Chaos list. These guys are amazing, and they're a classic choice. You do pay a premium for them, so they're 40 points apiece, and that's nothing to scoff at, but you're really getting something for your value here. They have a 1-up armor save, just with their base equipment, Chaos Armor, Shield, and a Barded Chaos Steed. Also, their Chaos Steed is amazing. He has got a Strength 4 attack. You're going to see a lot of cavalry in Warhammer that's going to have a mount that has a Strength 3 attack, so having a mount with Strength 4 is just awesome. The Chaos Knight on top is an amazing fighter, right? He has 2 attacks. Base strength is 4. He's very high initiative 5, also high weapon skill 5. These guys are frequently going to be hitting on 3s. Now, the base strength 4, we do need to get that up, and you have 2 options for doing that. You have lances for 2 points additional per model, or ensorcelled weapons, 3 points additional per model. Of those 2 choices, I prefer the ensorcelled weapons. It's going to give you +1 strength all the time and magical attacks. The only time you wouldn't want the magical attacks is when you're fighting high elves and they happen to have the banner of the world dragon. But, how often is that going to come up? Probably not that often. On the marks for these guys, I like the Mark of NURGLE, making them -1 to hit in close combat. All of a sudden, they're -1 to hit with a high weapon skill. Your opponent's generally going to be hitting on 5s. And even when they do hit, you have toughness 4, above average, and then you got the 1-up armor save. These guys are hard to kill, and it's strength 5. They're going to pack a punch. Great choice for the 10 slot. Going over to the Wood Elf Army list for our 9th slot, number 9 is the Treekin. The Treekin are a great choice in my opinion. They're 45 points a model, which I think is a bargain. They have a really impressive stat line. They're movement 5, weapon skill 4, strength 4, toughness 5. I have so much respect for toughness 5 on any troops. 3 wounds. Their initiative is higher than most people would expect at initiative 3. So you're going to be going before a lot of troops out there. 3 attacks, leadership 8. They cause fear. They have the Forest Spirit special roll, which is going to give them a 6+ ward save, innate. And then they also have a Scaly Skin 4-up armor save. These guys are really hard to kill. Really, really hard to kill. So at the toughness 5, they're going to soak up a lot of attacks. You're going to see a lot of attacks at strength 4. Even, your strength 5 attacks that are coming at you, they're only wounding on 4s, which means your opponent has a real opportunity to totally flub that roll. You also have the 6-up ward save, as well as the 4-up armor save. So if you're being attacked by strength 5, which is, it's not uncommon to be facing strength 5 attacks, you're still going to have 2 shots at a 6+. It's not great, but they can just soak up a lot of damage. You can put a unit champion in here, so in your front rank, then a fair number of attacks will have to go against the unit champion, which means it's even harder to pill a single guy off. These are a great choice, and I think oftentimes overlooked. The only knock on them is the strength 4. It's hard to get really excited about strength 4, and sometimes you can get in a spot where you're fighting heavy cavalry or something like that, and strength 4 is just not crunching through the armor. So that is the only knock against these guys, but other than that, they're just really impressive. A great choice for the 9 slot. We're sticking with elves for the number 8 slot, but this time going over to the high elves with the Sisters of AVERLORN. This unit is amazing, and it actually solves a lot of problems that you're going to face on the battlefield. So it's a shooting unit, a unit of archers. The Sisters of AVERLORN have a ballistic skill 5, which means they're going to be hitting on 2s before any modifiers. And they have the Bow of AVERLORN. This is going to give them flaming attacks, magical shots. Forces of Destruction are going to be at a -1 armor save against shots from this unit. And when I say that this unit can solve problems that you're going to typically face, like if you're going up against Warriors of Chaos, your opponent brings the Chimera, and they have the regen on it, all of a sudden you just shoot it with this unit, drop the regen, and then let your bolt throwers finish it off, right? This is true too, like a huge block of trolls or something like that. Anything that's really hinging on the regeneration save. This unit's just going to start licking their lips. It's perfect. And in addition to that, you have some of the ethereal units like your wraiths or your hex wraiths. This unit is a perfect counter for those because of the magical shots. They can be fielded in units as small as 5. They are 14 points apiece, which, you're paying a premium for them, but they just solve so many problems. Doing 2 small units of these, I think, is a great choice. Doing a unit of 10, also a great choice. But just having that option of the magical flaming attacks that are really going to hit consistently. The ballistic skill 5 is just amazing. The unit champion has a ballistic skill 6. And then they're also coming in at strength 4. So just having strength 4 bow shots that are magical and flaming. These gals are a great choice. For the 7th slot, we're jumping over to the Empire Army, and the 7th slot belongs to the DEMIGRYPH Knights. I never actually fielded these guys. The Empire is not an army that I have. However, I went up against them several times during my heyday of 8th edition. I always hated seeing them on the table. They have a 1-up armor save. They're hard to kill. They're fast. They hit hard. The Knights typically would be fielded with lances. The alternative is halberds. Halberds are going to be a little bit better in a prolonged combat, but you're giving up the armor save, so I don't think it's worth it. I think lances are the way to go, and that's typically how I would see people field them. Your rider only has 1 attack, so you're not really counting on him to do most of the damage, especially in subsequent rounds. The DEMIGRYPH, though, has 3 attacks at strength 5. The rider and the DEMIGRYPH are both weapon skill 4, above average. These guys can just take a lot of punishment, and they can give a bloody nose. They're fast. They hit hard. There's really not much to dislike about them. All right, the number 6 slot belongs to the Hex Race from the Vampire Count's army. These guys are just a devastating unit, especially against certain matchups like orcs and goblins spring to mind, things that are going to have a hard time with the terror causer, and some armies really struggle to actually deal out magical damage. So the Hex Race are ethereal. They can only be damaged by magical attacks. And this can just be something that really cripples your opponent and forces them to fight in a certain way because they're either trying to get their wizard into a position to blast them or a character that happens to have a magical weapon. So in these kinds of situations, you really put your opponent on the back foot. These guys are also very fast. They're fast cavalry. You can vanguard them up 12 inches before the game even starts. And then they're movement 8. Right, so if you're within 12 inches of your vampire, you're marching 16. They have the ability to move through enemy units. This is very rare in Warhammer. And if they do this and they move through a unit, each Hex Wraith causes a Strength 5 hit with no armor saves. Their attacks are flaming, so you're going to knock out regen, and their attacks, once they're in combat, also allow for no armor saves. They get 1 Strength 5 attack apiece. You know, 1 attack is not great. They are low weapon skill, which is 3. But if you pick your fight and you're going up against a unit without magical attacks, you're not going to take any damage, and you're going to be dealing some damage each round with 5 to 10, depending upon what unit size you fill these guys at, strength 5 attacks. So even in a prolonged combat where you're not taking any damage, eventually you're going to grind your opponent down. This unit is absolutely amazing. A great choice and a strong showing in the 6th spot. The 5 spot also belongs to the Vampire Counts, and we're jumping over to the Crypt Horrors. At the 5th spot, the 5th best unit in Warhammer, the Crypt Horrors are a great choice. They're movement 6, they're very fast, they're monstrous infantry, they're getting a stomp. They have a low weapon skill of 3, strength 4, which, you know, is less than ideal, but their toughness is 5. Same thing with the Treekin. These guys just take a lot of punishment. And they have poison attacks, right? So that does help mitigate that strength 4, because if you get lucky and you're hitting on those 6s, they're going to wound automatically. They also come with a base regen 5. They can just take a tremendous amount of punishment, and they can hold your opponent up in a certain spot, and then you can come in with some flankers or your vampire on subsequent rounds. These guys are a really solid choice. I think the 4th slot here might surprise a lot of people, but number 4, the 4th best unit in Warhammer, the SABRETUSK pack in the Ogre Kingdoms list. I absolutely love these guys. They're great. They can be fielded in unit sizes of 1 to 10, and I like fielding them as single SABRETUSK pack. For 21 points, you're getting a unit. So I want to stress that again. For 21 points, you're getting a unit. They're in the special category. You can take 3 of them. So for 63 points, you're getting 3 units. I love these small, cheap units because I want to know where my opponent is going to be. Right? Before I deploy my really scary stuff, my really threatening units, I want to see where my opponent is setting up his army. And a lot of people I find in Warhammer, they don't take a lot of small units, right? So when you do something like this, when you take 3 SABRETUSK single units, what that allows you to do is to deploy 3 units, and then your opponent has to deploy 3 units as well. And if he doesn't have these small units, then he's committing his forces, right? He's committing his big units while you haven't really placed anything. You've placed 3 fast, maneuverable units that can happily go in other spots, right? You can move them laterally across your line if you don't like what they're facing up against. But this lets you, in matches where your opponent doesn't have a lot of chaff, to see where everything's going to be before you commit anything. So for that reason alone, I love taking 3 of these guys. But they're also great on their own. They can be used as redirectors, right? If you have a very popular unit in, say, the Orcs and Goblins, right? You have the horde of Savage Orcs with all the characters in it. I can redirect that whole unit that has probably, when you add up the cost of the unit plus the characters, close to 1,000 points of stuff in it. I can redirect that whole unit with just one of these SABRETUSK, and you can put it in a funny angle because they're frenzied. They're going to have to run off in that direction. So for 21 points, I'm tying up that close to 1,000 point unit for 2 to 3 turns. Absolutely amazing. And they're actually not even that bad in combat, right? They're weapon skill 4 above average, strength 4, and toughness 4. But the critical thing with this is that they're initiative 4. So they're not going to do a ton of damage, right? Because they have 3 attacks, which is kind of impressive for a single model. But they're going to strike before a lot of wizards and things like that. So you can send them in on assassination runs too on wizards, especially as you get late in the game. Maybe the wizard had a miscast, they've already taken a wound or so, and you can just finish them off with these guys. These guys are great at hunting things like war machines, redirecting. Absolutely love this unit. Anytime I play the ogres, I take 3 of them, 3 single SABRETUSK. I think they're one of the best choices in all of Warhammer. Even though they're not going to wreck your opponent, they can be used in such a tactical manner that I think sometimes they're overlooked. All right, so jumping over to the 3rd slot, which belongs to the Beasts of NURGLE from the Demons of Chaos list. an incredible unit, right? 60 points per model. They're a bargain. They can be fielded in a unit size of 1+, which again is great. You have multiple options with these guys. You could field a single Beast of NURGLE, which is a great choice, right? It's cheap. It's 60 points. It's drop. It's still hard to kill, right? These guys are movement 6. They are weapon skill 3, strength 4, toughness 5. Again, that toughness 5. They have D6 +1 attacks, and they have 4 wounds. These guys can take so much punishment. They are demons of NURGLE, so they're -1 to hit. They're hard to hit. They're hard to wound because of the toughness 5. They have regeneration, so they're going to have a 4-up save against most things. If you happen to be going up against flaming attacks, they're still demons. They're going to have the 5-up ward. So really hard to kill. They have poisoned attacks. The only knock against these guys is that they sometimes struggle to get through armor. So if you're fighting Empire, if you're fighting Warriors of Chaos, they don't always do a ton of damage. But against a lot of other matchups where armor's not as big of an issue, where you're going up against a 4 or 5-up armor or even worse, these guys just, in addition to soaking up the damage, they cause a horrendous amount of damage. You're getting the stomp attack against infantry. They have the attention seeker rule, so they can accept and issue challenges. You don't benefit from flank or rear attacks on these guys because of the slime trail rule. Definitely one of the top choices in Warhammer. 60 points per model, an absolute bargain. I don't think you can use them wrong, right? Single models, units of 4, however you want to go with these guys. They're coming in at number 3 on this list. Right, the number 2 slot belongs to a unit that I love to hate, the MOURNFANG Cavalry from the Ogre Kingdoms list. This unit is just a thumper on the battlefield. They're way better than the DEMIGRYPHs in my opinion, right? They're coming in at 60 points per model. They're a bargain. You're going to want to give them an upgrade. You have 2 options there with the Iron Fist, which works as like a shield, or a great weapon. Personally, I think the Iron Fist is better. It's going to make these guys armor save 3+. And then normally when you're mounted, you don't get the parry, but the Ogres are an exception to this. So in addition to the 3-up armor, these guys will have the parry save of 6-up ward. They do some things that the DEMIGRYPHs don't do. D3 impact hits. Also, comparing the MOURNFANG to the DEMIGRYPH, the MOURNFANG has the 4th attack. He has lower weapon skill. He's weapon skill 3, but strength 5, 4 attacks. And then there's an ogre on top instead of just a spindly little Empire guy. So, you know, if you don't give them the great weapons, the ogres on top, they have 3 strength 4 attacks. Perfectly respectable. These guys also can be fielded in unit size of 2+, whereas the DEMIGRYPHs can only be fielded in unit size of 3+. This allows you to field these guys in really small units. And then, in addition to having a small unit of 2 models, one of them can be a unit champion, which means potentially you have 2 wounds on the unit champion and you have 2 wounds on the regular guy. So you've taken almost all of your wounds, but you're still at your full fighting prowess. Really frustrating, really hard to deal with. These guys are hard to kill. They can give your opponent such a bloody nose. They're movement 8, just in your face right out of the go. I think that these guys are the best monstrous cavalry in the game, and I don't even think it's close. Coming in at the 2 spot. And that brings us over to the best unit in all of Warhammer 8th edition, coming from the Dark Elf list. It's the DOOMFIRE Warlocks. This unit is just insanely broken, and there's no other way to put it. They're 25 points a model. They're in the rare section. They can be fielded in unit sizes of 5 or more models. And so for 125 points, you're getting 5 of these guys. They count as a level 2 wizard. So just put that in context. Normally, you're going to get a level 2 wizard for, you know, roughly 100 points, depending upon the army, to 120 points. That level 2 wizard is going to have 2 wounds. He's going to get spells randomly. He's not going to be good in combat, and he's not mounted for that price. He has absolutely no defense for that price. So for essentially the same price, you're getting a level 2 wizard that has 5 wounds, is mounted, has fast cav, has 2 great spells that you don't have to roll for. You just know that you're going to have 2 awesome spells. Comes with an innate 4-up board save. And, oh, you don't have to worry about miscasting because instead of rolling on the miscast table, this unit only takes D3 wounds. And yeah, you get your ward saves for those wounds. So you're really only expecting to lose a guy on a miscast. The 2 spells that they get, You have Doombolt, which is 2d6 strength 5 hits. Strength 5 magic missiles are really hard to come by. So you have a great offensive spell. And then you have just an amazing hex spell with Soul Blight from the Lore of Death, which can be bubbled. Soul Blight, in my opinion, is one of the best spells in Warhammer. Especially, you can move this unit into the middle of the battlefield. You have lots of melees going on around them, and then you just bubble Soul Blight. It can be targeting all enemy units within 24 inches, -1 strength, -1 toughness. This unit is just amazing. You could take it in an army that's as small as 500 points. They have poison attacks. The Doomfire Warlocks have 2 attacks each. So even if you're just using them as a combat unit, it's a unit with 10 attacks, strength 4. They're poisoned. You're getting all the rerolls for the Always Strikes First. Just an absolutely broken unit. And I think hands down the best unit in all of Warhammer. If I left out a unit that you think I should have considered, please post it in the comments and let me know. Or if you disagree with anything that I said, feel free to share. If you enjoyed the video and you'd like to see more like it, please like and subscribe. Bye for now.